This is Grafted Together with ACSI Chief Ministry Officer Jerry Nelson.
There's a groundswell of believers across the world who feel a strong call to return to some of the most challenging places to share and plant the message of the gospel, the city. There's a massive movement amongst church planting organizations as well as Christian school planting organizations to reclaim our major cities for Christ, not just in the U.S., but around the world. And I believe this return to those once evangelized epicenters of influence continues to honor the Great Commission to preach the gospel to every living creature to the ends of the earth. These courageous believers maintain the attitude that no city is too corrupt to receive the gospel message. Hi, I'm Jerry Nelson, and this is Grafted Together. One of those courageous believers is Dr. Paige, whom I had the privilege of meeting in Budapest, Hungary in March. She is the Assistant Director of Curriculum and Secondary Instruction at Life International School in Madrid, Spain. She started her professional career as a school social worker in a Virginia public school system before she and her husband were called to the mission field in Paraguay. During their 13 years there, she served in 3 different schools where she witnessed the power of Christian education to transform both lives and communities. This inspired her to pursue a PhD in Christian education leadership and follow God's calling to Spain. She is passionate about seeing God's kingdom advance in Spain through Christian education and equipping Christian educators to join in that mission. And I firmly believe that Dr. Paige's experience, expertise, and the recent research she has conducted can help contribute to this groundswell of kingdom advancing activities. Welcome, Dr. Paige.
Right. Thank you. It's good to be here, Jerry.
Well, it's great to have you. Well, one of the major challenges of reclaiming our cities for Christ through the medium of Christian education is the declining availability of teachers. Schools need teachers. There is a worldwide shortage of teachers, but I suspect there are these teachers are out there in mass. I suspect that they're ready to serve, and they simply are waiting to be inspired and equipped, and in that order. Perhaps your journey, Dr. Paige, to becoming a Christian educator can be one of those catalysts. Would you please share your journey with us?
Yes, I'll be happy to. I know you'd mentioned when you were reading my biography that I had started as a social worker. And so I have a master's in social work, and I was a school social worker for several years before my husband and I went on the mission field. And so my journey as a Christian educator actually began in Asuncion, Paraguay. My daughter, when she was in first grade, went to a bilingual Christian school, faith Christian school in Asuncion, Paraguay. And then when she was in 3rd grade, they had asked if I would come teach. And I said, I'm not a teacher, I'm a social worker. But they asked several times, and my husband and I prayed about it, and we really felt like, okay, this is God's direction, this is God's guidance. And so I jumped into teaching 2- and 3-year-old preschool in English to native Spanish speakers the first year, and the second year teaching also preschool and 3rd grade. But during that time, the school was becoming accredited through ACSI Latin America. And as part of that process, they were also requiring their teachers to become certified with ACSI. And I started the ACSI teacher certification. And during that time, because I had not been educated in Christian schools, I had not ever worked in Christian schools, I really was beginning to see how and understand the purpose of Christian education, and then also seeing its power to transform lives and communities. So that's really where it all began. Then after being there for 2 years, then my husband and I were connected with a guy named Scott Musser, and he was in Spain. And he found out that he had a group of people that formed an organization called Christian Schools in Spain. And they were wanting to start a school in Madrid for the Spanish population. And this really resonated with us because the vision that God had placed on their hearts to start Christian schools in a place where virtually none exist, and to reach a nation in spiritual poverty was really something that we saw God leading us to do. However, and we were ready to work right away and to leave Paraguay and go directly to Spain. But we all know that God's timing is not always our timing.
Yes.
So we did go back to the States for 2 years to start raising support to go to Spain. Support wasn't coming in, but God opened the doors while I was there to continue teaching. And I taught in a small Christian school. I taught 3rd grade for a year. And at that same time, I was connected with Regent University and felt led to work on a PhD in Christian education leadership, because I was thinking I need to have some kind of degree in education that would help with this formation that I felt like God was leading me down. And then the door did not open for us to go to Spain, but it opened up for us to go back to Paraguay. And we stayed there for 4 more years. But during that time, I was given the opportunity to teach 6th through 8th grade English language arts, Bible, and social studies. And then I became the curriculum coordinator. And then they needed someone to head the reaccreditation for their school for ACSI. And then eventually I became the academic director. So I was gaining experiential knowledge at the same time that I was also getting the theoretical knowledge through the doctoral program at Regent. And then in February of 2021, God opened the door for us to go to Spain, right in the middle of the pandemic and COVID. And we went directly from Paraguay to Spain. We weren't even able to go back to the US. But in God's wisdom, I went to Life International School right when they were in need of someone to be a curriculum coordinator and to work with their curriculum. And also they were starting the ACSI accreditation process so that they could open up the secondary part of the school. Right. So what we really see is that even though I was unaware of God's purposes, of why it took so long, 6 years, to get to Spain. He was preparing me for a need that he already knew would exist when I got there. And so that's really what my journey in education has been, is God opening doors and taking steps of obedience and seeing his provision and trusting in him even when it's not completely clear to me why it's happening.
And you know what intrigues me most about your story is someone asked someone asked you to join the movement of Christian education, even if you didn't see it. They saw something and the need was there. And it just really highlights this theme that we hear all the time, that if you answer the call of God, he will equip you to do the work, and he'll draw out what's already there that you might not realize is in you. And clearly, when we look at the arc of the story that you just told us, I mean, God just really did prepare you every step of the way, even for your next calling. And so, I really hope that that story is an inspiration for so many Christian school leaders who are looking for Christian school teachers. Sometimes they might actually be in your backyard, and that individual may just be waiting for you to ask them.
And throughout that journey too, as my husband was led into Christian education, he has a degree in history and worked at Colonial Williamsburg as a silversmith. But then there was a need at our school in Paraguay for him to teach high school social studies, and he started doing that. Wow. And I remember him saying that he felt more like he was reaching and doing God's work, working with these high school students in a way that he had never felt before. And then even coming to Spain, he has been involved within our school, doing various things, and teaching grades as we've needed it, but now currently doing Bible and social studies for our 7th and 8th graders and our 9th graders. So
now that's wonderful. One of the influential books for me is Ray Backey. the book is titled The Urban Christian, and it's focused on what are those key principles that contribute to effective urban ministry. And one of the principles is include your family. So,
Yes.
it's always great to see, families deeply involved in ministry, especially in our epicenters of cultures, our cities. Well, I want to pivot to the research that you have done as it relates to Christian educators in Spain.
Mhm.
Can you talk about the research that you've done and that you're still working on?
Yes, and so when I started my PhD and I was getting towards the dissertation stage, I really felt led to do something that would contribute to the direction that God has called me to, and to also because I know that he was the one who was empowering me to be able to do this doctorate, among being a full-time mom and working full-time and all those things to begin with. So I started investigating, what could contribute to professional development that is needed for Spanish Christian educators to work in Christian schools. And being that in the context of Spain, there are no Christian universities, there are really no Christian schools, and so the education that even Christians have received have been in a very secular context. So my research focused on investigating the worldviews of Spanish Christian educators and their alignment with a three-dimensional worldview model. And it was based on theories and models developed by David Nagel, James Sire, Catherine Schultz, and Roger Erdvig. I used a lot of that as the foundation. And the purpose was to discern the professional development needs that Spanish educators would have. And it was a qualitative review or qualitative research investigation that it started off just asking, who's out there that are Spanish, that are Christian, and also working within schools. And eventually a really cool side product of it is I began to discover that there's many educators. They're all working within the public context, but would have a desire, if given, to work within a Christian context, to be able to share their faith in a way that is open, and to be able to reach their own country for Spain. Their own country for Christ.
Yes.
Reaching Spain for Christ. So some of my findings that I think were pretty relevant is I found that educators, or the Christian educators, will benefit from a worldview course, but a course that is linguistically and culturally relevant to the Spanish context. So there's courses that are out there, but they're not necessarily relevant to the Spanish context. Even things that are in Spanish often are in Latin American Spanish, which linguistically it doesn't always align with the Spanish that's spoken in Spain. Also, I found that they would benefit from an ACSI certification course that also would meet their specific needs. Right now, there are courses through ACSI Europe and things like that, but not in Spanish, and not for educators in Spain. And also that they would greatly benefit from being connected with each other. Many of them are pretty alone and they don't maybe know that there's other educators that are Christians. And so having a way to connect them within our nation, the nation of Spain, but also connecting with other Christian organizations or education organizations that exist in Europe. Also, that it is important to evaluate teacher worldviews before hiring them, and also continuing to monitor their spiritual development after the hiring process. That just because someone is Christian does not necessarily mean that they know how to teach from a Christian worldview or a biblical worldview. and to make sure that they're getting the support that they need and the training they need, the professional development they need along that time. Also, implications for the organization Christian Schools in Spain is to include the possibility of having other models for school starts that would include more Spanish Christian educators, and developing a strategy to also meet the financial needs of those teachers. Right now at Life International School, our model is it's English immersion. We have American curriculum. We're also recognized by the Community of Madrid, but the majority of our teachers are missionary volunteers that primarily come from North America. So, and each year we've been able to have more Spanish hires, which is really good. But in the future, as we look to develop more schools, seeing how we can have it where there are more Spanish involved within those schools.
And so it appears that even the research that you've done is directly impacting what you're doing there at Life International, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's always great. I mean, again, talking about the Lord using your opportunities, your expertise to really advance the kingdom in your local context. But I want to back up again to some of the things that you mentioned as it relates to teachers, and just again for our listeners, setting the context that there is no Spanish university in Spain. It's not a highly networked area in terms of Christian educators. So there are a lot of factors that are against the development of a true Christian educator, not just a Christian, but a true Christian educator. But there are some things that can be done. And I think one of the first things you mentioned was contextualization, and especially as it relates to worldview course. And I know that there is there continues to be a desire for even worldview organizations that focus on worldview to be more globally present. But I think your research just really proves again that being globally present is one thing, making sure it's contextualized is another important area. I think the other area I wanted to highlight, and if you can just maybe go a little bit deeper, is monitoring the teacher's worldview, spiritual worldview and spiritual formation after they're hired. What does that look like in the context of Life International?
So one thing that we're doing is making sure that all of our teachers receive their ACSI certification. The Christian philosophy of education portion is part of that. With our Spanish teachers this year, or we've had 2 of our Spanish teachers do the courses through ACSI Latin America, so that they could do it in Spanish, which was just important for them. And also this year we've had one do it through ACSI Europe, because she does speak English. Also within the school is we make sure when we do individualized professional development plans with our teachers, and we ask for part of that to be a spiritual component. Not that we are measuring their spiritual life, but that there is something in there where they are seeking to grow in that area.
Right.
And we've also done 6-week rotations of different emphasis on one was differentiation, one was second language acquisition, and then I did one with groups of teachers on biblical worldview, and doing it in cohorts, so that they were learning together and then being able to talk about that as teachers.
And I think the key thing that I hear you emphasizing is you're being intentional, and it's fully integrated into the total development, excuse me, of the teacher. And I think that's always key. So and I like how you said it's like, we're not trying to measure spiritual formation, but we want to encourage it and say, hey, listen, this is really paramount to your ability to be effective in the classroom in particular. So, and you touched on it after you unpacking your research about the uniqueness of your school model versus others within the
Mhm.
Spanish context. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, one thing that surprises people is that Life International School is unique because it is the only evangelical Christian school in the community of Madrid that is open to the Spanish population and also maintains
Okay.
its Christian distinctiveness. There is
Mm,
Evangelical Christian Academy that has been in Madrid for 50 years, but they
mm,
primarily focus on U.S. and Canadian missionary kids. And there's
mm,
also two other schools in Madrid that have a Christian heritage, but no longer hire Christian teachers or integrate a
mm,
biblical worldview. So, actually, as far as I know, Life School, Evangelical Christian Academy, and now Synergy International School in Barcelona are the only Christian schools in the entire nation of Spain.
wow.
That if you take a search of websites and things like that, which is really surprising because if you think of in the US how many exist in one city, even small towns.
Yes.
Even when I
Yeah.
was in Paraguay, the amount of Christian schools, international and national, that existed, in that country, and to think that in Spain there's three. There may be some small ones that we don't know of right now, but that's that to me that really shows that there's a need out there.
One of the things that really intrigued me when we met in Budapest was you were talking about that very thing about the
Mhm.
challenges in Spain. I was just like, I would have never thought,
Mhm.
that's one of the places that Paul wanted to visit on his missionary journey. And we know that the gospel made its way to Spain, but
Mhm.
things have really changed, over the years. And, one of the initiatives that we have at ACSI is planting Christian schools in educational deserts. And I remember when
Mhm.
we talked again, you said that really resonates with your heart. Can you talk a little bit about just your desire and what you feel like what you believe that God is calling you and the leadership that you're connected with there at Life International to plant Christian schools and really
Mhm.
spread the gospel through the medium of Christian education?
Well, one thing that we've discovered as the school has been growing, a lot of it's been through word of mouth. A lot of it has been experiences of families that have come to our school and then recommend it to other families. We've also had visitors from the mayor of our city, of Tres Cantos, which is
Mm,
part of the community of Madrid, the educational inspector, even a member of the Socialist Party came to look at our school.
wow.
And none of them being Christians, but all of them recognizing that there's something different about the school, that they recognize that the
Mm,
teachers love their students, and that students are happy and learning, which is not always typical for a Spanish school. That
mm,
many Spanish schools focus on a lot on rote memory and getting high results on tests. There's a lot of bullying by both
mm,
students and teachers, and school failure is pretty common. And so when we receive students, and about a third of them come from non-Christian homes, that they see that their students are starting to grow and thrive, and
mm,
and that's really what is resonating with people, and why, even not being Christians, that they seek for their students, their children, to be in our school. um, and Life School also was developed not just to be just Life School on its own, but also to be a model school for the purpose of helping
mm,
start other schools around Spain. Um,
mm,
in November, there's going to be a forum that Christian Schools in Spain is holding in Madrid, to gather together educators who are interested in seeing Christian education spread throughout Spain. But what I was really thinking about is that one of our board members, she stated that in her over 25 years of being a missionary in Madrid, in Tres Cantos, where our school is that she has never
mm.
witnessed a ministry that has reached more Spaniards for Christ than Life School.
Wow.
Um,
Wow.
and And so thinking about an educational desert, if Madrid and the nation of Spain is an educational desert, what we're seeing is new life springing up in our school that can also spread to other areas. And just in the 3 years that I've been at the school, when I first got there, we were from 3-year-old preschool through 6th grade. Next school year, we are going to be up through 11th grade. But when I came here 3 years ago, we had 36 students. And now our projected enrollment for next school year is 104. And so we're even having exponential growth, and a huge prayer request is that we need a new facility or looking for a new place, because we're outgrowing where we are right now, which is a good problem.
Yes.
But when I first heard the term educational desert was actually when you shared that with me, after that workshop that we attended in Budapest.
Yes.
And I was thinking about it. And I remember during a prayer time there, during the conference, I was really struggling with the idea. I think there was 150 participants from 30 different countries, mostly from Europe at that conference. And I was the only one representing Spain. And I'm an American. So I was thinking, okay, why God is this happening? And then I really felt like God brought to my mind that verse in Isaiah 43:19. And it says, "Behold, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert." And when I got back to our school at Life, and I was slated for doing the teacher devotionals that Monday morning, and I shared with them just really that vision and just encouraging them in the work that they have been all called to there at Life School, and the direction that God is leading us to be able to help others to reach the nation for Christ.
This is so inspiring, and I'm even more encouraged after we're having this conversation here, just with what God is doing and what God will continue to do. And again, it only takes one. We know that through Scripture. It only takes one individual to really be on fire for Christ, and they light other people's candles for the glory of God. And then we all collectively, can fan the flame of kingdom advancement, that these kids that God has put around us in our cities, and especially in these major cities, these epicenters of culture, these epicenters of influence, they can go out and be ambassadors for Christ. Well, Dr. Paige, thank you so much for the opportunity to hear your story, to share your research, and to share your passion for reaching the lost for Christ in Spain.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Grafted Together is a presentation of the Association of Christian Schools International. Learn more about biblical worldview and spiritual formation at acsi.org/graftedtogether.